My competitors burned $5 to $10 million trying to do it themselves and they couldn't get the product out. We burned $1 million and we're almost out. So that's a difference.
When do you start taking on more advisors and building your team?
Very early on, we basically found an advisor, Lee. She could help us with reviewing our storylining, narrative, and everything. She also actually connected us with a lot of angels, and collectively they contributed almost $700,000 worth of investment. So advisor like that is like spot on.
How do you enter the robotics industry as a fresh grad compared to like someone who comes in from 10 years, 20 years of experience in robotics?
I call it a black box mindset. It's not easy. It took me a very long time to get to it. But when you're trying to pick up fast, you need to know what's your objective, what you need to build, and then what you need to use at a functional level without understanding the details and putting it together. Whoever tells you need industrial design first is telling you nonsense.
Hi everyone, I'm Eric, host of the Sow and Scale podcast. Today my guest is Rishab Patwari. Rishab is the CEO and co-founder of Hivebotics, a company that builds autonomous robots where its current focus is on commercial cleaning of toilets. Hivebotics was part of the Graduate Research Innovation Program, GRIP Accelerator by the National University of Singapore for deep tech startups and have also raised up to $1 million in pre-seed funding. They're just about to launch, so by the time this comes out, you might just see them in action. He studied computer engineering in the National University of Singapore with a second major in innovation and design and was also part of the NUS Overseas Colleges program. Today, we explore Singapore's robotics startup scene, securing LOIs or letters of intent and funding deep tech ventures, building effective teams and advisor networks, achieving product market fit in robotics, and navigating Singapore's tough hardware startup ecosystem. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did speaking with Rishab. Rishab, thank you so much for coming down on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So it's great to see you today, and it was nice knowing you as a dorm neighbor in university. You're not just building the future, but you're also a really caring and humble guy. So I'm super excited for our conversation today. Robotics is a super interesting industry. The global revenue in the robotics market is projected to reach $24 billion by 2029. Domestic services is actually the biggest pie, which seems like what you're working on is 31% of the pie, followed by medical, electronic, and entertainment. So tell me a bit more about Hivebotics, the key product and key milestones to date.
Absolutely. So at Hivebotics, we are developing autonomous toilet cleaning robots, which is meant for commercial toilet cleaning, for example, at shopping malls, airports, office buildings. But our vision is really to redefine the next 100 years of work, the workflows which are menial, tedious, demanding, undesired, through hardware, software, and intelligence, three main pillars to drive our automation. And toilet cleaning was a perfect start. Now, just to give you a bit of a background why clean toilets in the first place, well, if you look into the statistics, in Singapore, the average age of cleaners is hitting about 70 years old, and other parts of the world is also increasing in median age from 50s to 70s. And this is a huge problem. Cleaning companies cannot find workers who are motivated or able to do cleaning anymore due to a generational shift in the workforce. And toilet cleaning is not only a one, but it's actually a crisis for the cleaning sector in Singapore and parts of Europe. We thought that we have an opportunity to help this sector. And yeah, that's how we got started.
Could you walk me through some of the key milestones? I know you have 1,000 letters of intent or LOIs, and how much has been committed, maybe any financial figures as well.
Well, we have over 1,000 units LOI, that's worth about $70+ million worth of LOIs. These LOIs are essentially a preliminary indication about the demand from the customers, as well as for us to actually indicate to them the price. So when they sign, it's with the understanding about how much this would cost, and they actually commit to the number of units. Although this is non-binding, this actually gives us an indication, and for them as well, how are they going to deploy the robots. Now, how it translates to committed revenue? Well, we have already secured purchase orders for our first batches of robots. So for next year, we have almost $500,000 worth of purchase orders and $200,000 worth of paid pilots scheduled for next year. So very excited about that.
Nice.
Dollars.
Where are most of your customer based?
Well, our biggest customer base is in the US, and then of course Singapore itself. Just to put it in perspective, one customer in the US is more than the whole of Singapore put together. So the size of the market matters. The other regions, which are very, very, attractive, actually Middle East and Northern Europe. So Nordics, all these locations are really having very strong
And are these countries also facing the similar aging population? What's
It's
a bit different?
different in each geography. So, of course, in the Middle East, they have no foreign worker restrictions and there is no cost escalation problem. But in the Middle East, for example, the intent is they want to be the premiers, the frontier tech, enablers. So they want to have robotics, even if it costs more. So it's a bit different. If you look in Europe, it is a very similar problem. They have aging workers, foreign workers. The whole workforce is dependent on them. Some of the locations are such that people don't even want to go, even for foreign and aging workers. So locations also matter. That's a similar problem in the US. Cities not a big problem getting labor, but if you go out to like the counties and the bigger areas which are further away, a lot of foreign workers do not even want to go there. So you can't get local talent, neither can you get foreign talent. You have no choice. So these are real, issues on the ground. Of course, we are learning more and more as we go closer to deployment. But I would say that broadly, the issues are common, but how the impact is a little bit different. Singapore, places where there's much more legislations, tend to have pressing pressure. For other places, it's a slower, impact on them compared to I need to solve it by next year, friends.
How much are you saving these cleaning companies with robots?
Well, there are different factors that affect the savings. So number one is, of course, the geography. What is the cleaning wages? Of course, cleaning in Singapore versus cleaning in Australia is very different, right? So those things affect. In terms of percentages, also this depends on the size of the toilets as well as the cleaning frequency of deployment. So we estimate that for large facilities like airports, shopping malls, where they have high frequency cleaning, we can save up to 60% of a cleaner's salary worth of work with our robots. When you go to medium facilities, it's about 50%, and the small facilities about 40%, because the frequency of cleaning is also lower. So that's the range.
That's very interesting. So there's been a lot of commercial videos and teasers on
Yes.
LinkedIn and online. So I know you mentioned you're hoping to make your sale next year in
Yes.
terms of your PO. When are you hoping to make the first sale?
Our first deployments are due for January. These are early adopters, so this is not the commercial unit, but they are buying and actually deploying this unit. That's something you're really excited for because we would be tested, all kinds of issues with that. But one thing that makes it really special is our customers have put in the faith and they have taken the leap of faith to actually kickstart the journey with us early, even before commercial launch. They can also bring in inputs on what to change before commercial launch, which is very valuable.
So I think moving more into the origins of Hivebotics, you were
Absolutely.
inspired to start the toilet cleaning robot when your friend owned a cleaning company and faced staff shortages.
Absolutely.
So what also drew you personally to the problem to start Hivebotics?
So, a bit of a personal background at that point of time. I had just been evacuated back from NUS overseas colleges in Silicon Valley. So, when I was back here,
Evacuated?
yes,
Wow.
pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
So, that was a pandemic batch. So, I was working in a startup, while I was there, and I came back and I still worked in a startup. So, what happened is that I was looking for something to work upon. Hivebotics is actually an evolution of a previous company idea that we had. That was a HR management platform, which was the original inspiration from going to my friend's site. So during the pandemic, like I told you, the problem is aging workers and foreign workers. Well, foreign workers went back to their home countries. Aging workers were too scared to go to work because this is pre-vaccine era. So my friend, who has contracts which mandate minimum number of workers, is getting liquidated damages. And he cannot sustain the company because he cannot get any labor. And if you pay labor, you're not getting paid from your existing contract. They're not going to pay you more money. So that was his crisis, and toilet cleaning was a big part of it. We originally started off by trying to do a worker management platform because during COVID, there were compliance, like you need to have temperature taking, you need to know who came in and who didn't come. So we tried to create a platform for that, which, we started getting adopted, but very soon we realized one is that there are many more competitors. It's not a new problem. And the real problem at hand is not about how do you manage this existing pool of workers, but rather there's just not enough workers. So the problem is the same. It's about addressing the labor management issues, but how we shifted is from our original startup of a HR management platform to manage the attendance, payroll, all this kind of stuff for the workers. We evolved into solving the root problem, which is that there's just not enough workers, and that can only be done through automation. So we did not think of I want to do a robot and then come and solve a problem. Rather, we address the problem that we were witnessing upfront.
Yeah, walk me through the days in Silicon Valley. You were there
Sure.
in 2020. This was also the NOC program, the NUS
Absolutely.
Overseas Colleges program, where even Quexi Ray, the founder of Carousel, was on in a different year. So what did you see there, and how did that shape you as a person?
So I was in the NUS Overseas College Silicon Valley program in 2020, where I was interning in a medtech startup. That's part of the main focus of the program, while taking classes at Stanford for global entrepreneurial marketing, which was very valuable, as well as NUS and Berkeley courses on entrepreneurship. So it was a very big deep dive into the entrepreneurial world because we were thrown right into it. How it shaped me was that I participated in a lot of hackathons there personally, hacking away, developing things. I did participate in Singapore as well previously, but the difference was the community of people around. In Singapore, we are very aspirational, but still very conservative in a sense. Like we want to do things step by step. Over there, I saw people who would go all out.
In what sense, all out?
Yeah, I'll give you one illustration of it. So in Stanford, I heard from a friend that the school band there was, I think, banned in 50 states in the US and multiple airlines. I think the latest creative thing they decided to do was when they were taking a flight, the band members decided it would be fun to congregate at one side of flight mid-air to try to tilt the plane. So that kind of like all out, right? And what it made me realize is like, as a Singaporean or even an Asian, we tend to have this obligatory mindset of like doing things within a constraint. And I felt enlightened, really, that, well, the world doesn't necessarily conform to this same set of constraints. Silicon Valley, it may be good, it may be bad, but I felt like that pushes you to your potential. You're in the same institutions where some of the greats were as well. I was at Stanford, and then you're thinking about it. You start thinking that, okay, if they were here maybe 20 years ago, I got a chance now. Can I also do something with it? Like, it's essentially, you start comparing yourself. Not in a negative way, but rather like in a way like, whoa, if they can do it, can I also try something like that? What's stopping me?
It's more of
That's the question.
inspiration than
Yeah,
comparison.
absolutely.
That's nice. So you came back from, how long did you spend in the Valley actually?
So I was there for 4 months,
Yeah.
and then, we quitted back.
Yeah,
Then I actually interned for Silicon Valley company remotely from Singapore.
I see. And you came back and then you got 2 awards, 10K each to
Oh, yeah,
build these
VIP
startups.
grants,
How do you spend your first 10K?
I think it was 3.
Oh, 3.
The first one, we didn't take it up. Okay, so my first startup attempt while I was going through the NOC program was build a medtech startup, which was essentially autonomous pill dispensing machine idea. I hated the idea. I just didn't like the product anymore after a while. So we actually won a VIP grant. I had a team. I said, I want to leave, but you guys can take it and carry on. So I think they took it and carry on. And I also won 2 more VIP grants. One was for the HR management platform, which we did use and build a platform. That was something that we got towards the end of NOC. And then the third one was for the autonomous toilet cleaning robot. So interestingly, the HR management and toilet cleaning robot are evolution of each other because it started from HR management. Now, the HR management is still existing as a separate company.
Oh,
We are just like, when you have time, we manage it. It's just now given for free at this time because we have no time to commercialize it. But
yeah.
it gave us very strong experience because you can actually build things.
Yeah.
Whereas when it came to talking robot, initially we had to change our strategy completely. It was no longer about building, because you cannot build a talking robot without resources, whereas you can build software without resources. So that was the difference. It would become more about understanding the business, product market fit, and communicating the narrative so you can get the resources to get the building done.
Yeah, I think we'll get there later.
Sure.
So do you always want to graduate as an entrepreneur, or do you consider working for other companies as well?
Okay, interestingly for me, it was quite persistent in the back of my mind that I
What
wanted
made
to do
you
entrepreneurship.
What made you want to
So
start
my
things?
personal background is my family is a business family. My dad has a business. So, for me, a corporate job was never really on my agenda. I was looking at it from a perspective of like creating a high value business from day one. So before I joined university. But as I joined university in the earlier phases, as I'm doing engineering and then you're looking at all the engineers, I did have a outward pivot from the original entrepreneurship direction for a bit.
In what sense?
Like I was like, oh, maybe I can do a software engineer because it's like interesting, right? I started off in the business direction. I veered into I want to do engineering as a career, and then veered back into business. And I think there was a very nice merger because what I'm doing now, I had a chance to go really deep dive engineering in every single domain: software, hardware, electronics, mechanical, and also get to pursue my passion of business.
Yeah, that's really nice. I think robotics is also super complex, right, as an
Yes.
industry. So entering as a fresh grad, there's so many technicalities to learn, so many research papers to read, so many moving parts. How do you enter the robotics industry as a fresh grad compared to like someone who comes in from, 10 years, 20 years of experience in robotics?
I think one is you need a crisis because there's so much you need to overcome the motivation hurdles by having a big enough crisis that you just have to start absorbing things faster and making sure you fail less. So I think in our case, it's because we started a startup and we had no money and I needed to build something before I run out of money. So I was, again, like, we didn't have enough resources to build a full robot, but what can we do? What can we build first? So me and my co-founder, we started picking up what we could. I spent hours online trying to read through, figure out how to do robotics on the fly. And interestingly, ended up becoming a consultant myself to some other people within a year. So I think it's a case of like engineering, especially in the robotics space, it's very complex. It's years of experience that people need to pick up, but it can be short-circuited. You have to learn how to black box certain things. Like, you don't need to know everything into super detail. You gotta I call it a black box mindset. It's not easy. It took me a very long time to get to it. But when you're trying to pick up fast, you need to know what's your objective, what do you need to build, and then what you need to use at a functional level without understanding the details and putting it together. So it's a bit of an integrator mindset because that's what you can actually use to deliver at this point of time. And then once you have a bit more time and bandwidth to go deeper, that's when you can really start playing with the fundamental level programming.
Yeah. How do you decide to, I guess also as a fresh grad, do you have a view that entrepreneurs should come out from school as your typical school dropouts, or as compared to like a more experienced person? Do you have any views on that?
Well, I think this is where Silicon Valley shaped my views. I was told that half of the team in the Apollo mission was actually undergrads or fresh grads that basically created the first Apollo mission. So that being said, it's like, I don't think being an undergrad is any excuse for you to be not able to do things. I also see this a lot with some of the potential hires we see. Many of them, they have this mindset that they just graduated, they're here to learn, but, there's no excuse. You got to deliver from day one. So if you have gotten a degree, you have had 4 years of engineering, that's 4 years of experience. What have you done with it? And you get out, you got to start delivering. And come on, people from MIT, straight out university, they can build a rocket first in the world to go to space, so there's no good excuse.
What were some useful resources for you online?
Well, I think robotics, ROS Construct is a very popular resource. I think I'm a very visual learner. I don't like to read a lot. So I need something that's hands-on to learn. So the Construct has like a simulation environment where you actually write code and they have guided code training for robotics. So I think that's perfect stuff for robotics.
So you also have a co-founder, Dang, who is the COO.
Yes.
How did you meet Dang, decide to work with him, and how do you split up the roles eventually?
So for me, I was looking out for people because I was working on this thing alone for the initial phases. Then my original team that was working on the HR management platform, left to be, they graduated. Some of them were like, okay, this was fun, but like, I'm not going to do it seriously. So the original team left. After that, I was looking for co-founders. I had a few things in mind, but I want to make sure that I have working experience with them before I take them on. So how it began was that I was still in university. I haven't yet graduated. I still needed to clear my dissertation for engineering.
Yeah.
So I decided that how about let's make Hivebotics my dissertation, the idea of building a toilet cleaning robot so I can kill two birds with one stone. And also had the idea of getting 4 free interns because, you have 4 team members.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Zeng was one of those that, I actually posted out in like a engineering class group chat. Zeng and 3 others expressed interest. They joined. So that was really the start. It's a very sneaky strategy. But the thing is that it's a 1-year dissertation project, right? So months of working together with Zeng, some of the other guys, started to see what I like and what I don't like. In fact, Zeng and I originally were not getting along because he's very structured. I'm very last minute can hack through and he's beautiful. So it's two different strategies, right? But I think the thing is that there were also other people, right? In a sense, like I was evaluating who should be a potential co-founder. What I liked that for Zeng, he's very committed. When he says something, he will do his best in his capabilities to get things done. The second was also accountability is high. So that was something I like about my co-founder. And the third one was really that I looked at his background. I think it's very interesting. His family has a public company in Vietnam that manufactures aeroplanes. I saw a lot of relevancy because like can get operational background from the family. I was also, okay, this might be controversial, but I was actually looking for a co-founder with a business family background. It's very specific.
Why so?
I think for me, I wanted to make sure that someone I have is committed to the business and not too deep into the tech, because my view was that because people who are too deep in the tech, when the tech is less exciting because you may have to do all other things, they may not put in the motivation. And business also means that I felt that I'll be a bit more creative on solving certain problems, which is, you need to have engineering experience, that's for sure. I cannot have a complete business co-founder, but someone would have the hybrid of business engineering was what I was looking for.
Yeah. So what kind of creative things do you think that business people have compared to?
I won't say this is like a business people necessarily.
Okay.
This is something, like a business culture in the family.
Yeah.
I think that's very different.
Okay.
You can go to business school and have zero abilities to run a business. Let's be honest. You can have an engineering degree and maybe the best and a businessman as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's a cultural thing in mind, which is like, it's a risk-taking appetite, meaning like, if I tell you, can you take a $500,000 loan and you've never taken a loan in your life before? You do a calculator like, okay, these are my risks, makes sense, let's go.
Yeah.
That is a risk-taking appetite.
I see.
The second is like frugality. It's like, when you're a bit more business-minded, you'll be thinking about like, you cannot be trying to build everything yourself. You realize the value of labor leverage, capital leverage. These are two different things that give you leverage. If you have money, you can buy time. You can buy other people's time to get things done. And so you can get more things done. If you don't have money, the only thing you have is time. But if you spend your time on every single thing yourself, then you cannot cover all the work. You need to have leverage with other people, network.
Yeah.
So another thing a co-founder had was he was from ACSI. So originally I thought that would be very useful. To be very frank, in hindsight, it didn't really turn out to be useful, the network from ACSI.
Yeah.
But my view back then was that ACSI is very well connected.
Yeah.
So this was they may not be major factors, but a combination of all these factors really made me very keen on my co-founder. And the fact that we disagreed more in the initial phases was also good because the common goal was the same. His approach was augmenting the success of the whole project.
Actually, what was the dissertation key focus on?
In robot development and
everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, you can't finish it with resources you have in the university.
Yeah.
But like I was sharing, I think we disagreed more, and then just later, in fact, we quarreled. He was the only one I quarreled within the 4 people, but he's the one I chose for co-founder. And the reason was that the others would be like, okay, lor, okay, lor.
You're the boss.
No, it's not really that, but it was more of like the commitment to a common project was very different. So it's like, this is a person that really cares about, what he's doing and his own personal reputation on what the work needs to be done. The others would be more like, okay, I mean, I'm not a leader. No, don't need to do. So for me, that was good because for me, where I am strong at, maybe, then and areas where I'm weaker at, he may be stronger at it. So that was complementary. So you see, there's a working professional complementary areas. There's also, a background which I felt was very complementary, business background, engineering. And third of all, I generally feel like having someone from East Asia in a company, it's also good because it's a bit of like cultural diversity as well. So Zeng is from Vietnam. My impression of Vietnamese culture is that they are really hardworking, very committed. So I think having that kind of a diversity for Indian side, I'm Indian, so I have certain cultural strengths and weaknesses as well. So having that kind of diversity, I felt would strengthen the overall team. And that's how I got my co-founder.
Oh, how do you manage disagreements and at the same time manage to do you not have a common vision or
Right.
be able to build it? How have you managed your co-founder relationship so far?
I would say that you can have all sort of disagreements, because if you don't have disagreement, you're not being useful. Let's be honest. So disagreements is not a bad thing, but I think it's about how you manage. It's a very good question. I think we generally do not go personal ever. So you can have all kind of difficult discussion, even for equity to like money, putting in your own money kind of things. But at the end of it was like, look, this is my risk, this is my reward. I need you to come in with this. This is what I can put in. If not, these are the things that I hope will be reasonable. For example, let's say if you cannot put in money, then I might need more equity. It's very simple, straightforward.
Yeah.
So this kind of discussions, in a sense, it may help that we are engineers. Engineers tend to be very nice to each other. My view is that generally disagreements-wise, it's like laying out the logical reasoning of why I disagree with you. This is what we want to achieve. So whenever you have disagreement, the first thing is like at least common agreement on what we are trying to achieve here. Okay, and what are we disagreeing on? And then you cannot always middle path also. Like this is something I learned, because I used to always like be very
Take a middle ground.
middle ground guy. Okay, I take a bit of yours, and then everybody happy. No. As I learned through, I realized like you may need to pick some battles and win. Some battles you may need to like just let go, because maybe the consequence is not high enough. So it's a balance. Like if it's something that you really feel strongly about, it's like you may need a veto, he may need a veto for certain things. But for certain things which are like of very high value for your domain, you may need to just say, look, I need you to trust me with this. We have to go here with this. Can you reorganize? And I think that's when the role differentiation also comes in, because like at the end of the day, you need to choose a CEO, right? And there's a reason why I'm a CEO, because you are actually managing a few domains. So I think this helped in the structure. It also probably helped a little bit that I'm older than my co-founder. So, a bit more commercial experience as well, basically. So that helped with the dynamics. But yeah, I think there is certain battles where you got to win. Like you just got to put your foot down and win. Certain battles where you just got to like, is it worth winning this one? No, just let go and let other person win, because maybe they feel very strongly about it and it might be for the good, because everybody is on a common vision.
So how do you kind of split the roles in the early days with Dang?
I think in the super early days, it's about product development, right? Like limited resources. He was a mechanical guy, I was the software guy. So that.
But honestly, did you really split the roles, or did you just do everything? You're just
I think there was when it comes to hardware and electronics, what happened was that I would say that, okay, so this is a bias. I'm a computer engineer, so I would think that computer electrical engineers tend to be better at code. I don't trust mechanical engineers with code. So it's that tuffle, right? Where like you have a certain training on how to get things done. For mechanical side, I touched very briefly, and after that, I trust my co-founder with it. But I think what we realized was that in the initial stages, this is a product development phase. Right? This is the place where most quarrels happen as well, because it's all logical with different viewpoints. For me, I never trusted his mechanical, because it's like it didn't look or feel good. It was the one that works, but then it's like it's not repeatable or reliable. That was the challenge I had. His side is like the software is like it's like he would say it's because of the software. I would say because of the hardware. I think in the end it was like, if the things are not working right, we are very strongly believing that it's because this thing is not working because of our scope of view. Yeah, so those kind of things. And then, how to overcome those was like, for hardware, electrical, I think, you need, especially when you're just out of university, I think you need experience, software as well, but for hardware, electrical, for prototype phase, also you need experience. So I think what I realized was that fresh grad cannot. That's the truth. Masters cannot also. You need experience in the industry. So we actually engage outsource partners, and then we learn from them because we saw them doing it, right?
How do you find these outsource
You got to pay money and engage them, right?
And they couldn't do a good job?
The earliest one in Singapore did a good job for the scope of work that we gave them.
Okay.
But then we realized and that's when the real shift in thinking happened. We cannot be doing the development work ourselves. We need to control the product, because at the end of the day, if I have 15K, I try to make it myself. You test in the market straight away is a no-go. Then you just wasted your time. If I have 15K, you pay 15K to a party, you get something out, you quickly test, you realize a failure, you just burn 15K and you burn less time. Then you can get the next iteration. I think that was a learning. One thing that struck me was that we need to control product testing. We need to do product testing. We cannot be in development mode forever. because if you're always in a lab, you're not even testing it on the ground, you're getting nowhere. So
Yeah.
the fastest way to get something out that you can test is to de-risk on all the things that you cannot control and then double down on a secret sauce. We know a secret sauce will be software, AI and software. So secret sauce, initially we basically started doing all of those things ourselves. We tried to, so Zheng's role became from doing the mechanical design and electrical design work to managing it. And for me, was like software was something that was too expensive, so we couldn't outsource because the cost outside was too high. That's why I was doing myself for a bit. And then we started hiring in-house team. Once we had funding, the first team that we hired was software, so that that can also become continuously developed. And it's still not easy. I think we have come a long way. Now we have continuous momentum in software development and even mechanical, electrical. We have a strong party to work with. But yeah, it's a shift. And what this shift allowed us is now we can focus on product. We can focus on testing the customer requirements, can focus on testing all the parameters of success. And of course, there's also drawbacks. The drawback is that now you have dependencies, on partners. You got to communicate those things and make those changes happen. But instead of doing it yourself, which is always faster. But the good thing is that once you pay them, they have to deliver, Whereas if you have an internal team, they try all 101 things, especially fresh grad. They don't deliver, you burn the money, but you still don't get output.
On the point of outsourcing, actually, there's a lot of early stage advice out there that says you should be building everything yourself. I guess that's maybe more towards software. Do you think this is something specific to what you're trying to build as a hard tech startup?
I would say it depends on who you have in your team. Like if you have complete nobody with no experience and trying to, get things done, I think you're wasting time. I think then you need to know and assess your team's capabilities.
Because there are founders who are told to just try to learn everything themselves and build everything. Because if they outsource, then they might end up, getting something they don't like, having to reiterate and then ending up wasting more money, right? So I guess what you manage to do here is you control the outsource process quite well, and you are very sure about what you want, and you actually get what you want at the end of the day. How do you
I think it's more of like you are still the one. It's like engineering management. So instead of doing, because that's where you're probably sucking at the most because you don't have experience, you get what you need by communicating what you need to the parties and then making sure it's within the budget, and then you get things moving. So I think that's a difference. You're still the one because you have full visibility and control over what exactly is being put in, how are they doing their stuff, and there's also knowledge transfer happening in that process.
Yeah, walk me through your experience at Grip. How did that help you?
Absolutely. I would say Grip was a very, good starting point for us. Grip, is a rigorous accelerator. My challenge was I was the only startup that was still undergrad while doing Grip. Most Grip startups are. That's why it's called Graduate Research Innovation Program, right? And not Undergraduate Research Innovation Program. Well, I was having a bit of a time management challenge because, there's full-time university. I still have my classes.
And social life.
A little bit of social life. I was an in-house RA at the same time. And I was also doing Grip. So that one was mayhem for me. It was like no sleep at all. Grip was quite rigorous. I think they really went through product discovery phase, how do you do market validation, product validation, all of those things, specification determination, because deep tech, so some of the things were a bit more deep tech focused as well. How do you get certification? How do you plan for certification? How do you plan for IP? All this kind of things. So that was very valuable. I think we still tap on it sometimes. I think the other thing that Grip was very strong at is the network. NUS Grip just called me into a meeting one day. It's like, oh, this is Clarna Perkins right in front of you. The partners are right in front of you. Come pitch your startup to them.
Wow.
This is NUS Grip. So they are really connected. They have a lot of strength. It's an institution. Sometimes it can be a bit academic. Sometimes it can be a bit slow. One thing I would say is that, tap onto the strengths of NUS ecosystem, but don't follow blindly for any founders who are interested in Grip, because, even with the best intention, use your lens or filter to understand whether the person, what he's saying for a certain domain of comments is justified with experience in that space, or is it just a observatory, remark. Why I say that is because the NUS Grip team is a wonderful team. Some of them are really experienced business people with traditional business background, because that's what Singapore's ecosystem is. But when you are looking into the high growth startup advisory, I think there's a limited pool and hence limited resources that they have on that front. But they do have it, especially the senior leadership. The kind of context they have, I'm mind blown.
Wow, that's really interesting to know. So moving on to product, you talked a bit about product. How do you validate the idea? Who are your customers, and How do you eventually get to the LOI
Yeah,
stage
sure.
as well? Yeah.
Well, when we first were building ourselves, so we're trying to build together a prototype that we can use to demonstrate a showcase to potential customers, so we can get resources to build further, right? Most of it a disaster. You go there, half the things don't work, and suddenly things don't work here and there, and then you start stabilizing things. Mostly with hardware and electrical, because it's that's the things that is most unstable in the early phases. For testing, we basically went through one of the things I learned from the Chinese companies is they actually put together concept videos, which was very cheap and very good way to test. We put together concept videos of what we want a product to look like. Just costs a few $100s. Get an Indonesian animator to do it, and then show it to customers like this is what we're trying to build. What's your comments on it? So that's one layer of testing. We also went in as cleaners ourselves to intern for a week in a hotel. Within 1 hour, we know that hotels shouldn't be our target market segment initially because the toilets are too small and much more variety. And from a technical feasibility standpoint, it was not easy. So that was very good invalidation, right?
Yeah.
Then you know that you don't position yourself for hotels. It's like even though hotels is a huge market, may not be the market fit. So you learn a lot. We know that it was a good fit for airports. It was a good fit for office buildings, a potential good fit for hospitals because we went there and we observed the cleaning cycles there.
Yeah. When you walk in there, you're telling them, hey, I got this video, I have this product, but it only comes in 2 years. Like, can you sign this for me? How does that process work?
LOIs are non-binding, first of all.
Yeah.
So we tell them that, look, can you help us? Essentially we're a startup. This LOIs will help us with fundraising. This will cost you nothing. And, this will also allow us to kickstart as a committed early partner. We'll be working very closely with you. So I don't want to, some people, right, they give away things like exclusivity and things like that for LOIs. No, that's ridiculous. Don't go do the... One thing is that I'll call it be a little bit cocky. But you cannot be like begging for things. People want what they cannot get. It's a freaking mantra of life, whether it's dating or it's startup or even client. So you need to present leverage. How do you present leverage? Look, you want a toilet cleaning robot because this will disrupt your operation, which is very strong validation as well, on the product demand. And you go and tell them that if you sign me this, I will prioritize you. Now, I need 1,000 units LOI from you. Can you sign? And I give you the cost as well. We can have further discussions. This is non-binding. You help me, I help you. Simply put.
I love how you're pitching it to me right now.
Right.
Okay. Was there a point where you realized, okay, there's some sort of product market fit after speaking to a few more customers? Was there a certain point, like after your 10th customer or something?
Because the demand or the urgency is so high, customers are starting to give us POs, pre-orders. We need to pay up front.
For orders that are going to come a year or two later?
Yes, they're willing to not pay 1 year in advance, but give us orders, and then once we are ready with 2 or 3 months payment terms, they'll pay up front.
Wow.
So that's kind of things. Of course, we're not Elon Musk to go and take all the money first. We are Asian. This is something could be a weakness as well. Like we were hesitant to take money. In fact, we were delivering pilots where we didn't take money for a long time locally because we wanted to meet our milestone requirements. Because once we take money, we feel that we have a responsibility to give a successful result to our customer, even if it is a pilot phase. So I think we were hesitant. Now I think our confidence is much higher to start taking. That's why we are kickstarting the pilot sales.
How did you spend the first 100K of funding, and how much did you pay yourself?
It disappeared very fast. We were taking nothing during the 100K. Most of the 100K was like, by the time we got 100K, we already spent because quite a bit. Because NUS is, before, when you're doing a grid program, they also give you 10K. So part of 100K goes back because you need to pay back the 10K that they gave you earlier because that's supposed to be reimbursed from the investment. Then you have 90K. Then you have to pay for a license fee. So you deduct all those things, you don't really have a lot left. That's what. And then the thing is, we are doing hardware, assembly, manufacturing, or anything like that. You engage contractors. It's not cheap. So that also disappears some of the cash. So all in, it was very fast. Within like 3 months, 100K will disappear for hardware. But it's not really paying us salaries. So we were quite clear that with that 100K, we need to build our next milestone. And the next milestone essentially was getting to a demonstratable unit, something we can demo to people. So actually, before the 100K, my family actually put in about 30, 40K Sing as well. So I had to use my own money for a bit. And then my family actually invested 100K as well. So that was what was necessary to get it off the ground. We were struggling a lot to get angel investors. We were working very hard to get it and get the narrative right. So it's also partly the ecosystem was a little bit early when it comes to hardware in Singapore. So we struggled a lot. So until we found our pre-seed VCs, and it's interestingly how we found them was I flew to Silicon Valley, and then like in Singapore we met some VCs which were local. I told them, look, Silicon Valley, I got this offer. You want to take it or leave it? And then they were like, okay, take it.
Wow. We'll get more into your fundraising stories later, but maybe back to product market fit. How do you find product market fit as a hardware startup with super long development cycles? I guess there's things you have to tweak in between that your customers want, and certain things that eventually feed into the ultimate end product, right? So what other things do you do in terms of product development?
Right. I think it's a continuous process. One thing you learn is you're not going to have a perfect launch. You're going to have to launch multiple times.
I guess what's the MVP like for you?
The MVP is something that you roll out fast, fail fast. You get all the issues fast. So MVP is like what you think, you get it out first based on your assessment. You get it out, you get in an operation environment, you learn all the things that you don't know.
But in your case, you don't really have
no, we had an actual robot to bring down.
Robots, yeah. So it was first the video, and then after the video, you validated,
you have to get a robot.
You started building
a simple robot.
And probably that few $100K went into a robot.
Yeah. So the first $100K actually went into a very basic robot that can't really clean, but can show the cleaning concept. So the steamer inside is like $100 steamer, which can't really be used for real cleaning.
Yeah.
But those kind of things integrate together, try to make it look, feel, and demonstrate. And then from there, we get feedback from our customers.
How do you develop that first MVP?
That was done by ourselves.
Oh, yeah. I guess you also have this idea of desirability, feasibility, viability. How do you kind of all these things into your first product?
The videos and stuff is, one layer. It helps for two purposes. It also gives you the concept communicated to investors and clients much better. What exactly are you looking at? Because when you show them then they will pick on all the things that will technically get resolved by commercial. So you want to tell them, look, instead of trying to show them something physical first and then get bombarded by unanswered questions, show them the final concept.
You mentioned a bit more about investors. Walk me through your process of how you communicate with so many stakeholders, your investors, your clients, your internal teams.
We were blessed. I think our investors are really nice. Very informal communication. So we update them on good things, bad things, we just share with them. So of course, if it's a bit more different profile investors, it might be a bit different. We may have to actually prepare formal things to share. But our investors have been very close with the founders. So I think that's for our VCs. When it comes to clients and my internal team, the organization took a while. Let's just put it this way. To organize internal team communication towards getting things moving, we required role identification. You cannot everyone doing everything. So between me and my co-founder, of course, we had role splits, but we had overlaps as well because there's only two, right? But once we started having hires, things started getting much more clearer. So because then we had a head of engineering that helped to manage the engineering team. What happens then is that you actually have distinct roles for the C-suites. So the head of engineering, once you have a head of engineering and engineering team, you should not technically have to do that anymore. And then product is like something that my co-founder evolved into taking on. So he communicates with the engineering team to get everything internal, because COO, everything internal is being managed, while I get more time to focus on the strategic and the external. So this is a transition. Not easy because you were the one doing a lot of things yourself first, but the communication cycle becomes better. You have processes in place, sprint meetings, you have weekly goal setting meetings, all these things are coming into play.
Yeah, moving into advisors and team. When do you start taking on more advisors and building your team as compared to, two of you were building this product in the early days?
Very early on, we basically found advisor Lee. She was a former APAC director of Sodexo, one of the world's largest cleaning companies. So we thought that having her on board has a multi-pronged value for us. One was that she was running a business consultancy that included startups, so she could help us with reviewing our storylining, narrative, and everything for fundraising. And that was one domain. Other domain was her contacts, being one of the largest fundraising cleaning company in the world. So she can understand how to structure things to sell to the cleaning companies, because that's in pre-LOI era. We don't even have any LOIs yet. So having her on board, and she also actually connected us with a lot of angels, and collectively they contributed almost $700,000 worth of investment. So advisor like that is like spot on, That's the kind of advisors that can help you to really get past your finish line. We also had a technical advisor, so we basically engaged a PhD in robotics who were at early stages writing the code together with us when we couldn't really pay. So it was expensive on equity-wise, but at that phase of time, to cross that hurdle, we needed to use that.
Why advisor, not like employee, I guess?
Because no money, right?
Okay. It's
Advisor
more
is
about
all
hiring,
equity, yeah.
Yeah, okay. How do you think R&D at Hivebotics is different from NRF or like National Robotics
Right. I would say
Foundation?
that Hivebotics is a commercial company. We're not a research institute. So a lot of things we do, it's under very strict timelines and it needs to go commercial. So that's the two pressures. When it's more research oriented, there's less focus on the repeatability, reliability. It's more towards groundbreaking innovation. I think at Hivebotics, it's like you still need to do some groundbreaking innovation, but it's about how do you stabilize as quickly as possible because we need to deliver this thing to a real customer.
Yeah, and I guess there is some sort of commercialization in NRF. I think they do try, but I guess it
I think
does.
it's a mandate. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like percentage, right? Our bodies would be like 90% focus on commercialization, NRF maybe a different percentage share. But, it's very important from my observation that, companies like Hivebotics and institutions like NRF and the research institutes work close together because they may have complementary strengths and weaknesses.
You mentioned product development as an expedition. Do you want to talk more about that word expedition, or is this not worth talking about?
Well, I think like sharing with you, product development for us evolved in multiple phases. Phase one was founder-led development work, and then phase two was outsourcing plus consultancies getting involved. Phase three was starting to build an in-house team. Phase three now we have starting to have an in-house team. In fact, now we are starting to also start thinking about like, okay, the consultancy and outsourcing has gotten us to a baseline. Now we can actually start taking over our own thing and we may not need the consultancies. So it's a very different shift. But what I realized is we didn't do it this way. My competitors burned $5 to $10 million trying to do it themselves and they couldn't get the product out. We burned $1 million and we're almost out. So that's the difference.
How much runway do you have?
This is confidential, but Hivebotics is fundraising currently. We technically, in the runway, we do have, because we have pilot revenues coming in, we do have good, healthy runway ahead. Yeah. But we are looking for fundraising in order to really commercialize successfully and fast because without raising our next round, we won't be able to upgrade the hardware to certified level performance and we need a bigger team to support operations.
Yeah. Were there any temptations to pivot to other ideas?
I won't call it temptation. I think we always were committed because we saw the market demand for this. The demand, once you have so much demand and LOIs and sales, that's one thing that my mentor, who actually led one of the largest public companies in Singapore, actually told me, is that like sales validation must come before product. You need to go and validate your product demand. When you have so huge demand, you yourself know that this market can work. It's just you need some resources to get there. The incentive to pivot is less. The incentive to pivot is when you are unknown, market demand, right? Yeah. That's when you have incentive to pivot. Here is a case where you know that this thing will work. You just you need to build and you don't have resources to build. So you start channeling a lot of your time and resources towards finding that resources. We had some moments where we were like thinking about maybe for survival purposes, it might be easier to do something else. That's a very different kind of a thought process. It's not invalidation of the product.
It's more of a short-term revenue generation or something along those lines. Yeah.
That's some of the things. I think having those options available to you is good. If I had a chance, I would actually love to have, this is something you don't tell VCs, you have it internally. I would love to have a service team, that is actually generating some revenue. So I never come under financial pressure and, completely being dependent on VC money.
Yeah.
So that would be awesome. And you can scale up and down your R&D efforts.
YC actually had a podcast where they were saying how the success rates of deep tech and software startups are actually very similar. Even though you would think that hardware would be a lot more risky with huge investments. But I think it's because of what you said about the demand being validated very strongly. The main risk is whether you can build it or not. Whereas for a software startup, it's more whether what you're making is even worth anything.
You need to ask YC, how come they are not investing enough in hardware then? Okay. What I also learned as I was going to this hardware journey is that a lot of the traditional hardware companies make huge amount of money and they are not a valuation game. You won't even know their names. But companies, they can be making aircraft one part, and they can be making like $30,000-$40,000 profit on one part and they ship like 1,000 parts per month.
Wow.
So they are these kind of companies and you never hear about their name. They are run by maybe members of like GE, Collins Aerospace, all these kind of companies. Yeah. Those who leave the company, they go and create companies to supply to these companies. Huge money. And I was like, wow, that's like actual, forget about startups, forget about all these things. These guys make actual millions of profit.
Yeah.
and they can pay themselves that profit 100% if they want to, each year on year. Your valuation, nobody knows. It's like you don't care. It's all about churning out the cash. Like, so it's very interesting. I mean, it's a different type of business opportunities, but hardware on its own, it's not necessarily, you can make 60, 70, 80% profit margins really well. What we are doing is very productized hardware. I think instead of like, supply chain hardware, productized hardware is a bit harder, but that's when you have to, your price is set by the market, equivalence.
Mm-hmm. Instead of like supply chain being more of a manufacturing process, all that. Yeah, in terms of maybe design, I've been seeing Hivebotics from the early days. It looked a bit more scrappy, and then now it looks like super futuristic. Do you have any lessons around design for robotics?
Well, I think the design for robotics is that whoever tells you need industrial design first is telling you nonsense. You need functionality first, but don't make it look like a metal, like go and paint it, go and do something basic to make it look pleasant or palatable, right? I think at least that is good. So I think it's a good balance. You don't need it to look super fancy. People care about functionality most. In your video, definitely make it fancy. It's animated anyways. Make sure it looks, feels, touches like a great thing.
Yeah.
But don't spend too much time there. Design-wise, design for functionality first, okay? But at the same time, try to make it modular such that you can quickly switch things out. Think a bit about like, what if this fails? This is invalidated, so you need to change. For example, in our case, it's like seat lifting. It's a very complex process. We had multiple design iterations for it. The ideas were failing. We chose to use aggregated, designs. For example, we use steamer, but the same equipment can also blow dry, can also water jet, so this kind of some of the things. Oh yeah, I think something very interesting to share is that for Hivebotics, we try to minimize reinventing the wheel. Like, we are not cleaning equipment manufacturers. Like, we don't make steamers and things like that. So don't be an idiot. Like, I'll use the word idiot and try to build those things yourself at the earliest phase because you don't have time. That is not something you should be building.
Yeah.
You should just go and buy a damn steamer, hack it apart, put it into your system. That's literally the fastest way to get a steamer working in your system. Yeah, that's exactly. And then you hack it apart, right? So we now work very closely with the global cleaning equipment manufacturer because even at commercial scales, we think that this is the best way to move forward because one, it gives you dedicated cleaning quality that's already validated for years and is sold. It also gives you access to their customer base because they themselves have an incentive to publicize and market you. So it's a multi-factor value add. So I think that that's why back to the question about should you build everything in-house yourself?
Yeah.
There's strategic value not to do so.
In terms of building your team now, you're currently in the phase 3. What have you learned about hiring from phase 1 to phase 3?
Right. Hiring from phase 1 and phase 3, I think in the first phase was no hiring yet. It was more of outsource and consultant hiring. Experience was that consultants, you have good consultants, you have bad consultants. Don't put your eggs in one basket. Be ready to fire. Fire fast, hire slowly. This is the mantra that I learned. Don't waste time, fire. In phase 2, we had some hires who were really nice people, who were great motivated people, but we hired them based on personality instead of like skill sets fit. So, it's very ironic, right? So when I was looking at my co-founder, I had a very clear sets of, things that I was looking for. When we were hiring, because of our experience with consultants, we were hiring based on people that have above and beyond motivation. But I realized that if the skill set fit is not there, then they have a hard time because they need to pick up things very fast and they're not founders. That's the difference. You cannot put employees on the same level of expectation as founders. That's my learning lesson. They are not the same. It's just different.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that as founders, you need to burn the midnight oil. You need to stay overnight, do whatever needs to be done to pick up the skill sets. You better do it. And even then, like if you have someone who has a very big gap, it's going to take forever to catch up. I think this is a learning for me. My original philosophy was I was focused on individuals and the character rather than skill sets. I believe that everybody can learn everything. I've been proven wrong. I don't believe that anymore. I think character alone is not enough. Character is very important for sure, but you need both. Like now it's just both. Yeah, you need both. There's no limit.
When you're doing something really technical and difficult.
And fire fast. I think we were very nice. We gave our cash on one of our hires who was an amazing guy, but he also had a hard time because, we are pressing him very hard. Expectations are there. He's not able to catch up. And we basically had to let him go.
And in robotics, I'm guessing your salaries are pretty high for hires.
Yeah, it is.
Because you need very qualified people, right?
So that's why, learning lesson, fire fast, hire slowly. That's why consultants, agencies are good because you pay based on success. If they don't deliver, they don't get paid. If you hire wrong people, you're going to be paying salaries and you don't get delivery. So that's why I say fire fast.
Is success-based agencies, was that part of how you outsourced things and,
Yes,
got
yes.
what you wanted as well?
Yeah. So you basically give a milestones. We also had bad experience. So we basically went to Vietnam.
Yeah.
We engaged a hardware company there. It was a terrible experience because we learned out that what they promised us, like they have 10 people of engineers, PhDs and all this kind of thing, go there. They're all interns working on the project. Then their PhD and all these guys are all remote, from different countries trying to tap in. The experience was, the engineering quality was utter rubbish. So bad that essentially we had to terminate contract. So that's where contractually doing things is very important. We had contractual protections. Every single thing, we went through lawyers. We insisted on going to a lawyer, making sure everything is contractual. So you see, whenever you start a relationship, it's always honeymoon, right? But it's when things don't go well, and you need the way to divorce nicely and make sure you get alimony, right?
Yeah.
So I think for us, we had to terminate contract without having to pay for, non-deliverables from the contractor. So I think that was not easy because the contractor also feels like they did their best, but incompetency is something you cannot fight. Incompetency is something you must just cut. That's what I learned.
That's a tough lesson to learn. Maybe moving on to how you wrote on a LinkedIn post, you're now focusing on building software. And I guess the end goal is to commercialize and to put it out into a toilet.
Yeah.
So I guess what's the key things you're solving for right now?
I think a lot of it now is about repeatability and reliability. A lot of our issues we face is no longer functionality. We can clean. We have demonstrated cleaning. You saw the videos, they're real, they're not orchestrated. They are just speed up for the sake of the LinkedIn, but they are actually real-time videos with no intervention in between. So we can clean. You can see it. It's what you see is exactly what you've done.
That's the issue, right? Is it?
Speed also, we have already addressed most of it now. Functionality-wise, yes. The problem is, soft failures and hard failures. When soft failures happen, they are still becoming catastrophic. Hard failures are also happening too often. So
what's soft and hard failures?
Well, hard failure would be like, say, robot going into collision with the wall. Or, for example, there's a lot of mechanical parts. Some of the parts may have calibration issues, so it cannot pick the tool properly. It may collide into the tool. These kind of little things are very annoying. Sometimes the AI, this is a toilet bowl. It may plan like, this is a toilet bowl. This is offset. So all these kind of things is about reliability. And that's something where we face challenge because our team is too small. So when it came to reliability, the team was always stretched thin. So, and we have limited resources. So one of the things we are looking at now is we are actually going to relocate some of the engineering to India. So we are setting up a software. We are going to gradually relocate everything out because Singapore is expensive. Unless we have enough funds to sustain Singapore, we are actually relocating by default now.
What do you think needs to be done in Singapore to support the deep tech, hard tech startup ecosystem? So you mentioned that Singapore is a really tough environment to be building robotics. So what more can be done within Singapore?
Well, I thought about this quite hard. I think one of the things I saw, like a lot of our strongest interns coming out for NUS, the first thing they do after they clear NUS is they go to Berkeley Masters and then they disappear from Singapore. So somehow creating enough opportunities for them in Singapore to take on the projects here would be really good.
They disappear from Singapore.
They get out. Singaporeans get out of Singapore because they get the good ones get opportunities in the US. And this is not a Singapore specific problem. I even went to India, right? I found out from the companies there, the good engineers, the moment they have 2 years of experience in robotics, they get poached by US. So there is this trend. And even went to China, right? Interestingly, I found from some of the guys from India, they're freaking CTO in China for a robotic company, which is bloody funny. So I see that there is this talent drain towards US and China in general for robotics. That's a very specific thing that I see. Interestingly, Singapore can also be a talent drainer because ASA actually gets a lot of robotic engineers from India, for example. So, but what I realized is that Singapore has a few challenges. One is that for startup, we usually do not have that many hardware VCs in Singapore, very limited. And that also means that the capital that we have to deal with fresh grads. And robotics is something where you need specialized knowledge, which is very deep. So that's why it's called deep tech as well. You need people with maybe 5 years experience on average for each domain. So they can really contribute to fundamental development. You can do POCs and prototypes with fresh grads, but you cannot do commercial grade projects with fresh grad. That's the thing that I learned for robotics. But you don't have the money to hire at Singapore rates for the commercial grade people, even though they are good. So it's a catch-22 problem. I also looked into Malaysia. Quality is so-so, I would say that the best thing for Singaporean startups is that Don't try to outsource in Southeast Asia. There's just not enough talent. Singapore is already the best. You need to look at China and India for robotics. That's how you low cost. And you need that at early phases. Once you have money, then you can keep major R&D in Singapore. The good thing is IP is protected well here. Singaporeans can be really hardworking. I think that's my experience, really hardworking. Then they can go the extra mile as well.
Why does it look like Singapore is trying, or at least trying to position itself as like a robotics hub? I feel like the reality feels quite different, right? You see news about robots for cleaning, for more surveillance, surgery, construction, manufacturing, even the software side of things.
I would say Singapore is a robotics hub, but it's not one that develops robots. I think what Singapore is it has the second highest robot adoption per capita in the world. Number one is Korea, number two is Singapore, number three is Japan. So Singapore is ahead of Japan in robot adoption per capita. So we are a very strong robotics hub. We have commercialization of robotics at scale. But it's a tiny market, come on. Like Singapore, even if you do robots everywhere, it's still freaking tiny. So that's the reality of it. The challenge we have is that, like if you go to Korea, Korea makes some of the biggest robotic companies in the world. Singapore is starting to look into that space, Lionspot being one of the inspirations. Hivebotics want to be number two, Bum
Let's
Robotics. So many great companies coming out. But I think at the scale of Korea, the amount of investment, even state-backed investment, Doosan Robotics, 300 million IPO, all these kind of things we don't see yet. I think my personal grudge is that essentially I feel like our institutions, right, they have the best intentions, like, we have our government agencies and stuff, but their own bureaucracy or the pivot or the speed of moving into it is too slow. Hivebotics have gotten $0 of grant till date, which is funny. We are like, doing the thing that is in the mandate for the government, right? And you know what we realize is because accessibility to some of these resources, it's very slow. So the model Singapore works in, right, is like left hand, right hand. You have to, let's say you have grants, right? If you're working with like a government agency, then, it kind of channels back in, feeds back into the system, which is the traditional model for Singapore. But this model, right, is very disincentivizing for private sector growth because VCs may not come in. The local ecosystem people are already a bit conservative because they haven't been exposed to this kind of like higher risk, higher return ecosystem. So what I see is that it needs to be driven by government. The government needs to start thinking less about ROI because you are the government. You can take more risks. You need to start throwing money into like potentials and expecting not much returns. And then you will have some successes and that will actually inspire generation. I think this is what they need to do. The current approach is still very safe. You get the research institutions, they get IPs generated as your KPIs. If you're looking at the private startup that is not a research institution, trying to tap on this funding is very difficult.
There's some sort of misaligned incentives there to be building the next world-changing robotic startup in Singapore at least. But I guess one push I have on Hivebotics, maybe shifting gears to competition. Competition is mostly now in the US, Israel, and even Europe. And are there any in Asia? And if not, then shouldn't there be some sort of advantage, building for Asia, in Asia, differentiating yourself? Because if you have no competition in Asia, then...
Okay, my competition is coming up in Singapore. Two more companies are coming up in Singapore. One of them is a public company that's the manual toilet cleaning robot. The other one is a startup as well, but earlier stages than us. So there's competition coming up that's catch-22 because we kind of spurred the competition. So it's an Asian thing. I think even in China, there are companies starting on this thing. I would say that Hivebotics, what we are doing is that we are in a leading position right now. Resources will mean that we can lead further. I see Asia as a potential medium-term market. I still have a lot of demand from China, from India, from Japan, Korea. But I would say my focus right now is to go into our main market, which is the US. A few reasons. One is that I see that for Hivebotics, our team profile makes us much more suitable for the Western market. The reason is because let's say I was a Chinese background, I can speak Chinese and stuff. I would tap on a Chinese market. It's a huge market. You can double down on it. But I have a different profile. It makes me more suited for the Western market. Now, that's kind of like a market strategy.
So I guess US is kind of the main focus for now. And lots of competitors trying to play catch up. So in terms of some of the failures that you have experienced or rejections as a founder, how do you deal with some of those, and what helps you to keep going?
I think rejection and failure, you got to thick skin as a founder. It becomes like daily dose of rejection and failure. Gotta get used to it. I think for me, one is, of course, you'll be upset. I've had pitch sessions where I finally damn nice. They are going to sign the dot already, right? Then they see a demo, something mess up, and then like you're like, okay, nothing in my control. What can I do? Robot decided to have a mess up, and the team is all frustrated. You crack down on them, then everybody's unhappy together, or you're like, how can we bounce back? And let's come up with a plan and make sure we can minimize. I cannot guarantee we eliminate, but let's minimize. So the next time I bring an investor over, at least we do not have that. It happens a lot in robotics, especially because
What were some of the most difficult humps that you had to get through as well?
the difficult harms is like, it takes a lot of energy to build like a investor lead. So you really have like one chance, you want to impress them. So if things like, and it's very frustrating sometimes when you actually know your team has done a great work, but when it matters, things just mess up.
Murphy's Law.
Those are really frustrating. So now I think I have also started thinking less existentially. Last time I used to be like, really think existentially for each, major meeting. I think I've started thinking less existentially. That helps to ease off pressure. It's like, well, there are investors, they come here, they might understand this is an early stage company. So that's like you're trying to rewire yourself to justify a little bit, but it's to also manage, because what's the worst thing you can do? You basically go into a spiral of crisis mode all the time. It's not sustainable. So I think that's something that I learned. The second is that you do need to create some crisis sometimes as a founder, right? You can use external, you can use internal. Internal is like, I want it by this time. External can be like, you take on certain commitments which force a team to work together to deliver. So that speeds things up. Yeah. So these are some of the things I learned, but it's a tough management. Yeah. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm not super good at it yet.
You've been attending quite a bit of incubators, events, plug and play, other incubators as well. How did these things also accelerate your growth apart from Grip?
Well, I think every accelerator has a different mandate, so there are different strengths. Grip was very deep tech in nature. The rest were a bit more like plug and play. Was actually for market entry to the US.
Oh.
So we did in San Francisco plug and play.
It's a 6 months thing, is it? Or
Yeah, it's about
you fly in and out?
There was a 2-week flying period. So they were designed for international companies going to the US. So
Yeah.
pitching in Silicon Valley instead of being the one watching the pitches, that's a huge change. Getting more comfortable with it in a very foreign environment. We are also going through procurement accelerators like with Sodexo and even Rome Airport, for example. Those are really exciting for us because that is really focused and targeted, some of them. So Rome Airport's accelerator is towards commercialization for the airport itself. So we do the pilots, they pay for the pilots. And then if we like it, they are going to buy the robots. So that's amazing roadmap for us. This is one of the things we really like, and we are hoping that we can successfully demonstrate those things. So each accelerator is a bit different mandate. I would say that some are more external focus, some are internal focus. Internal focus about fixing your internal issues to get shit done. And external ones about how do you sell to the external to raise capital or get clients.
Yeah. Now moving on to fundraising and cash management. Walk me through your cash management for building a hard tech startup.
Well, I think cash management is super duper important. We actually do forecasting. I actually have my CFO to help me create the template of how we do forecasting. So all our projected expenses, we review it once a month at least. On a daily basis, every single expense that goes through, so someone needs to fill the form. That essentially is a Google form, and then automatically adds to my Excel sheet. And basically every single day, or at least maybe with 2 days or 3 days of max offset, I have full visibility on the breakdown of what kind of expense. And this gives me a lot of control. It lets me know when I'm going to run out of money. Okay, it lets me know where the expenses are getting shot up. And as you start putting in more processes and your estimation gets better, you start getting closer and closer between forecast and real. I think that's huge benefit because, one thing is you can fundraise all you want. If you can stretch the dollar longer, you actually have longer runway. So that's the kind of things that forecasting and cash flow management helps.
And walk me through your learnings on fundraising in terms of structuring debt, grants, equity.
Right.
What kind of funding structure do you find most helpful for deep tech, hard tech startups?
I think you need strong equity investment at the start, or you need grants. Like I'm talking about $1 million, $2 million. If you don't have that, it's wasting time. But I will also say that because we had less money, we became more efficient. That means that when you have more money, upcoming money, we know we already have very strong processes set in place to use those dollars wisely. Because we may have companies that may spend $2-3 million, right? Because they had such a long runway that they were invested in the wrong thing faster. Because when you have less money, what happens is that it makes you cut your non-performing assets fast. It makes you fire the person faster that is not performing. Makes you cut out the contractor faster that's not performing. It makes you focus on doubling down on more clients so you can get more investment. So all these things, I think, it can be a blessing in disguise having not enough money. That's how to put it.
It's like attention, because on one hand you want to be able to raise to have enough
Yeah.
runway, but on the other hand, if you have too much, then it makes you a bit complacent.
Yeah. I think the time pressure of money running out can be a huge incentive.
You talked about working with debt, so
Yes.
I'm guessing you also took on some debt. How did that fuel your growth?
I think debt is important because, one is you don't lose equity, especially with hardware. A lot of it is like, is working cash flow, meaning you need debt if you pay and then you get paid back and you make your money plus you're covering the debt, right? So if you structure it well, debt can be very powerful instrument. Why? Because the need to repay can force you to focus on revenue. Second, debt is cheaper than equity. I think this is a common, parlance in the startup world. The key thing about debt is, I would say don't take it too early. I think Hivebotics is taking slightly early than what we would normally like to. The reason is because when you are having active cash flow, meaning like recurring in and out, right? Then debt is very clear. You know what to take debt for. But if you're taking it for like R&D, generally I prefer equity for that phase. So you start small. SME working capital loans in Singapore are really good. They have 70% risk share by the banks and Enterprise Singapore. So let's say worst case scenario, your company closes down. You only really have to pay 30% of your debt amount.
Wow.
So that's a very good opportunity to start taking debt from these platforms. They are rigorous. It's not easy to get this debt because they make sure that you have certain ways of payback. But you got to make sure that, you start small and test waters. You get comfortable how to manage that. Have your very strong cash flow management and payback mechanism. And I think you'll be fine.
Moving on to AI and how it's going to change the world. We're in the fourth industrial revolution. Do you think robots are going to take over the world?
I think robots will progressively increase their visibility in the world, for sure. Take over, I think they're far away. I mean, for all that's worth, every single robotic companies I'm talking to that's doing humanoid robots telling me it's all nonsense right now. I mean, it's not say nonsense, but it's getting at least 5 to 10 years away.
Just for X and LinkedIn right now.
Like even Tesla, their latest launch video, they basically had robots going around doing waiter. 90% of it was actually teleoperated by a human. That's an important showcase to show the potential. That's what I meant by in hardware and deep tech. Even Tesla, they promise self-driving cars so many years on years. But it requires time, and sometimes it's a fog of war, which I call in startup. You do not know the complexity. You can make estimation and all your estimation can go haywire out of the wind, which is the risk, because for VCs, that's the risk that they want to de-risk on. Hivebotics is special because we really focus on product development through partners. We have managed to de-risk very quickly compared to other companies. We have a relatively stable hardware, stable software coming up, and this was just done with very little burn.
So I guess you think robots are also overhyped, at least in the current time scale.
I think that robots are not really overhyped, but they are going through their development process. I would say that. I would say you would see them for niche applications first and then general purpose applications soon.
Do you think there will be a human in the loop in the long run?
I think in the long run, no. I think it will be really fully autonomous because the AI capabilities are also improving. The use cases would be having bigger data sets. So the robot would just basically like ChatGPT, right? You can have multiple use cases and the robot can perform them autonomously because it's just like different packages. The more packages you build up over time, it can handle more use cases and become general purpose.
At least for robotic applications.
I think that's where Hivebotics also comes in because we see that we are not really threatened by humanoid robots because technically they come in and you need a toilet cleaning specific robot, right? But how we see is we are building application layers, application intelligence layers for different use cases, starting with toilet cleaning, of course. If you have a humanoid robot, you have a hardware, you have general control mechanism, you still need somebody to tell you who basically creates an application layer of how the robot can perform for, say, like toilet cleaning, or how it performs for, say, like, landscaping. So these are application layers that Hivebotics would focus on.
Yeah, and I think Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, was also saying about it was more for like Gen AI applications. What's your view on Gen AI in robotics?
Well, I think Gen AI in robotics is helps with autonomy for setup and onboarding. I think that's very relevant. So for Hivebotics, that would mean like automatically generating the AI model for cleaning. Right? But when you talk about human in the loop, I think that's a very interesting startup example I have. One of my friends, he owns a company where they literally have dumb robots that are not intelligent, means they have arm and can move, but they're teleoperated fully. And what happened is he's solving a very interesting real problem. In America, he's doing agriculture harvesting where all these robots are being operated from India with low-cost labor. So the problem there is labor cost, right? but the technology is not great enough. You just got low cost labor. And the thing is, it's not time rush. They can slowly do, can have 10 people working on it. The net cost is still lower than harvester in the US. So very smart idea. Human in the loop.
So where do you think the next million jobs will come out of?
I don't think they're going to come out. And if you see all the hype about
I
sales,
guess if you look
everything,
at the progress of humanity, most of us used to be farmers, and then of course
Yeah.
we came out to work in the industrial revolution,
Right.
and now we're working mostly online. And I guess with this
See,
revolution,
anything
as well,
that is very labor intensive will start getting eliminated. Labor intensive and repetitive. There's two main things. Repetitive. I don't think we are like general purpose niche application robotics yet, but repetitive and labor intensive things can be relatively in the medium term eliminated.
do you
completely.
feel like, I guess as a human species, would there be more interesting jobs that come out of this revolution?
Absolutely.
Or,
I'll give you one example. So when we are doing toilet cleaning, we're not replacing a human cleaner. What we are doing is we are filling in the shortfall because there's a technological development cycle as well. And, it's not there yet to replace a human. At the same time, there's a shortfall which is increasing, right, in terms of labor. So we're plugging in that gap and then we are filling it up gradually. The second thing is that essentially we're also upgrading jobs. So a human cleaner is now becoming a robot hygiene supervisor, right? He's actually learning new skills on how to manage robots. He's learning how to maintain robots, how to process the information from robots, all these things. So new jobs are created. Now you may argue that the ratio of the jobs may be like, that's like you have 10 lower paying jobs, but now you have maybe 3 higher paying jobs instead. There is a consequence, but the thing is that generally, if you look at most of the countries where we are focusing on with robotics are actually really high cost labor nations where the population is also shrinking. So this is actually quite in line with the whole demographic change. But if you look at countries where there's high population growth, then there's high impact. And I think one of the areas I see in India, for example, they have huge manufacturing automation. All the factories are fully robotified. And there I see like, if they want to be the next China, for example, the jobs will just be automated. So the labor advantage just doesn't come. And even America may be able to do manufacturing now.
And
at
I guess
low
as
cost.
a country with high population growth, you also want to move the economy towards more higher paying
Absolutely.
jobs and more innovation. What are some developments you're most excited about in robotics and AI?
Interesting, even though I'm in this space, I only get to pick up anecdotes these days, but I think what NVIDIA is doing is amazing. I really like what they're doing. I think the integration of LLMs with robots would be very interesting to see. You're kind of giving the general purpose abilities to a robot. I don't think it's easy at all, but I want to see how repeatable and reliable those are.
Yeah, moving on to some reflections. What's helped you most in this journey of building Hivebotics?
I think personally what helped me most is I think taking time out for myself. I think that's very important. What I do, I got addicted to chess. I'm not great at it. I'm frustrated when I play it, but I got addicted to chess.
Enjoy the frustration.
Enjoy the frustration. It's very interesting. I didn't imagine I would freaking playing chess like every single waking moment when I'm not doing work. Yeah, I think for me, I was also trying to sustain a healthier lifestyle, like going to the gym and runs. Partial success.
You actually
partial
slimmed down a lot since I saw you.
Bro, I slimmed down
yeah.
to almost 20 kgs minus, and then I gained back again.
Oh, you gained it back?
This
Oh.
is bad case. So
Oh.
I would say slimmer than you. You missed it. That was last year.
I'll
Yeah.
catch it again.
So anyway, so the thing is like going to the gym, having like some personal success. I think one of the things I learned is that if you are having like, rejections and failures everywhere, back to that question about rejections and failures, you need to have some mini personal success, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you go to the gym and the things you can control, you go and do your normal weight set. Okay, wow, I achieved something today. I think that can transform your business as well, because then you're from that spiral of going into negativity. You go like, okay, not so bad. Maybe you get to neutrality. It may not be positive, but you get neutrality. Then you look at things more calmly and you can respond better.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about like early stage fund. Just why I also really appreciate you coming down. I remember I was hearing a friend who
I think it's highs and lows. It's like when you look at it objectively, you sometimes realize that some of my friends who remind me that, look, if you go out in the workforce right now, you have gone through so many things. You have done hiring before. You have done project management. You have built teams. You have learned the technicalities you have done technical sales. So there's so many things you learn. One of the things, especially for undergrad startup founders who came out straight out of university, is that you do not actually realize your net worth or in terms of your value. I think there is a lot of value being created and someone will see the value. And so, for us sometimes to step back and look at our own value generation, what we have done is very important.
What's the decision-making process that helped you?
I think I have a very, very strong logical brain. I think it's very logic driven. It's a good thing and a bad thing, but I think my decision making process is very objective oriented. So I always start with like why, start with the why. Why are we doing this? What do we want to achieve? Like let's say in an earlier phase, right? Why are we doing this? We are doing this because we want to demonstrate enough to get enough resources to build the next stage. So that's a very clear difference. If you're trying at that stage to try to build the actual thing, you cannot. Then you optimize for that. So for me, it's a very logical decision-making process. When it comes to hiring and everything, it's like, why did I hire this person? What is the value I wanted from this? Is it taking away time that I have to spend? If it's not happening, then he's not serving his purpose of being hired.
Any advice you'd offer to aspiring founders who want to innovate in the robotics space?
Open your horizons a little bit. Robotics can have very high grade value outside of Singapore because the markets are bigger and the impact is much larger. Singapore is a test bed market at best, so travel a little bit. For robotics, don't stay in Singapore alone. You can use Singapore to get things started, but before you even get things started, you should go and understand some of the problems worth solving outside because that's the real market.
What's the biggest transformation you've seen in your time in building Hivebotics?
One is that I was a very, non-confrontational person, not usually get into confrontation. But I think for me, the learning is that I need to stand my ground sometimes. So I think standing a ground is something, whether it's with suppliers, with internal team sometimes. So it's a confidence that you have to build up, including of upsetting people because you cannot be pleasing everyone. So building that confidence or conviction, like, okay, this one I really have to step in and take it or leave it. And then you're the boss, so you really will implement it. So that conviction took a while because that was kind of needed in order to make certain things happen successfully in time. But you also don't want to go overboard in that direction, right? Then you become like someone where you are close off to the ears of everything else. So I think this conviction is a very tricky one. There's no good answer to this, but I would say that it's like, when do you know that you got to ignore the whole world and just go with your gut? It's a tricky one. And for me, I was never doing that because I told you I'm very logical, right? It's always taking inputs and very logic driven. But learning to trust yourself and knowing when to step in, I think that's a transformation. It's a very difficult one. Still have the tendency to not trust my own gut. I think I am improving, and I think that's a great transformation for me. Very difficult one for me.
What's the last reflection question? What's the favorite part of your job?
I think favorite part of my job, on a lighter note, is that actually it's really favorite because is that I don't usually have to set up my alarm clock. I tend to shift all my meetings to the second half of the day.
You work better at night, right?
I work better at night, so
you're always up at night.
So I think for me that helps because it's like a normal 9 to 5 job. Waking up and to reach office at 9 a.m. will kill me. My productivity cycle is better at night. My team may have a different schedule because they are still in a 9 to 5. But for me personally, it makes it very well suited for the role I'm doing. That I usually can sleep in the morning while I'm actually doing most of the work at night and everything. I think that helps me because most of my work is also international. And it fits just nice into my body's preference. So I think what I like about the job is really that, it's like I'm just out of university. This is my real world learning. This is my real university. I think personally, it's just deep diving into every single crap that you can get, from the business, and you learn how to overcome, make decisions to solve problems, one problem after another. I think that's what I would say, like, I aspire to be as a CEO, right?
Yeah, that's really exciting. I'm just going to move on to our rapid fire
Sure,
round. So I have
sounds
about
good.
9 questions and 3 books you've recommended most to other people.
There's this book called The Culture Map by Eric Mayer. I think that's really interesting. I'm reading this book called Start with a Why,
Okay.
Simon Sinek. Then there's another book, it's a FBI Negotiators book.
Never Split the Difference.
Never Split the
Chris
Difference.
Voss, yeah.
I think these are some of the really good ones.
Yeah. What's the film or show you enjoy?
The Founder, the McDonald's founder movie. I think that's really nice. I love it. I like those movies where it's like those sports movies, right? Where they run dog and then they go and struggle against the odds to go and win. I like those kind. On a completely different genre, I love, those White House, the series like Designated Survivor, The Diplomat, this kind, because I just like that kind of problem solving.
Political show. Any podcast you listen to?
Yeah, The Economics Explained. It's something I listen to like every single day. I think I love it. I also have a subscription with The Economist. Some of them is more business related, but some of it is like The Drum Tower is one of the series from The Economist, which is about the history of China and events happening in China. very interesting for me because as a non-Chinese, kind of gives me some of the insights in the history of China for me.
I feel like you know China history better than me. Whenever we
I
land on
guess
China.
because I listen to it freaking every single day or every week whenever they release a new episode. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Well, what's your favorite meal?
Favorite meal? So I know this changes from season to season, right? But right now, my favorite meal has been, there's this Indian restaurant called Karus at Bukit Timah. So
Alright.
for me, their set meal is like very satisfying. Before that, I was eating salad every day. So, it's a bit of a shift.
I don't think that was your favorite meal.
So, but
Salad every day.
interestingly, I've gotten a bit of a disdain for pizzas recently because I went to Rome and
Yeah.
I was surprised I don't like Italian pizzas in Italy
Oh,
because they're too bland. Like seriously, they need to put spices, man. I can't. I was crying.
chili oil.
They don't.
that.
It's just not the same thing, man. It's not the same thing. You need our pepper. You need our chili pepper and everything. If not, it's not nice.
A hack that I learned in pizza restaurants is to ask for chili oil. Sometimes they have it in the
Yeah,
kitchen
yeah,
for
yeah.
their favorite customers. But what's something people often get wrong about you?
I'm just guessing at this point. I would say maybe my outward projection will be like everything is under control and everything is going all right. But internally, man, it's a freaking crisis. So I think that's something that may get wrong about me. Everybody thinks like, oh, everything looking good, but that's effort to make it look good.
Sounds like what you have to do as a tech leader. So if you weren't running businesses, what kind of job do you see yourself in?
I'll be running a business. I'll be running my dad's business. So yeah.
Okay. Give me a snapshot of an ordinary moment that brings you joy.
Eating karus was one. That's a thing that I like.
I have to
ordinary
go there.
moment. I think what gives me joy is like when you wake up and then you check the weight, right? It actually dropped from the previous day. That will give me joy. I think lately, to be very frank, is a very good question that you asked. In fact, this might be the most difficult question because I think going through this startup phase, right? The one thing I did notice, especially since I've been doing it since university, is that I have been very engrossed, in the startup. I think taking a step back out of it, it's almost confusing. So it's something that like, those kind of like joy moments, like when you're free and easy, right? Don't really have headaches to manage. They do happen, but I don't recognize them. So that's the thing that's happened. That's why when you ask me, I can't even remember. I'm pretty sure it happens, right? On a
Like every
day-to-day
day,
basis.
maybe.
Yeah, but the truth is that it's quite rigorous. You wake up, you are on to getting all the things done for the day and the next day and the next day. So I think going to the phase when you're not firefighting anymore is very important. And a lot of people say that you should, start is not everything, all this kind of stuff. But the reality is that as a founder, you are in the heat of the moment. You cannot just quit in the heat of the moment to take like a 2-week break. It doesn't happen. But you need to get out of that phase where you can, like, last time maybe you use your firefighting with like maybe a little, cup of water, but you need to start having a fire engines and other teams around you to handle things. I think once you get there, you will have the peace of mind to move things, with more time for yourself. You can take a holiday, you can go and like spend more time with your friends. I think my time with my friends has decreased a lot because there's just absolutely no time. Usually I catch up over lunch or meals with them, but it's always a rush. So it's not even fun anymore. Like, it's almost like a chore. That's the truth. So for a friend who is in a different mental state, it's like, oh yeah, it's nice to catch up. But to me, you may even be like, oh my God, I need to meet this person. Sometimes you just want to eat lunch alone. That's the truth of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a very difficult question. How do you find joy? I think what would really give me joy is like, I can get out of this firefighting phase to a phase where I can,
Pray that day comes soon.
Yeah.
Well, what's something you're grateful for?
I think I'm grateful for my dad. I think I'll be very honest with you. If my dad didn't chip in with funds at the early stages and unwavering support, Hivebotics wouldn't be able to move through. I think the local ecosystem is not strong enough without self-funding to move things at an early stage.
Oh. How can listeners find you and be useful to you?
I think you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think that's a good platform. You can share my email. I think that's more than happy to do so. It's Rishab@hivebotics.tech. That's literally the email. But yeah, I think you can email me. I don't really respond on Instagram and Facebook because I am not so active there. But these two are the most important ones. And yeah, if you need specific advice on if you're trying to do a startup, I'm more than happy to hop on a call to share some of my insights and see if I can be of any help. More than happy to do so while I can, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for
No problem.
taking out the time to speak with me, Rishab. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, likewise. Thank you so much, Eric. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks so much for listening to the Sow and Scale podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tan. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a comment, follow it in your favorite podcasting app, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can also join our WhatsApp group where you can provide me with feedback and chat with like-minded individuals, or subscribe to my Substack where I post about business and entrepreneurship. Thanks so much for listening to this episode, and see you on our next one.